Welcome to 100 Yards Football. If you like the video, please come in and share it. Today, I'm going to highlight one of the greatest football players that ever played in the National Football League. He's known as Sweetness. Out of Jackson State University by way of the Chicago Bears, Mr. Walter Payton. I'm your host, Vincent Turner. If you like the video on time, please come in and share it. And special thanks to my producer, Mr. Making it happen today. Walter Payton. A lot of history with Walter Payton is you can't even describe how special and how great a football player individual this man was. And when you look at Walter Payton, it's so many positives that you can come from his career and him as an individual. Number one, he's my father's favorite football player of all time. And see, my father's still living, and I'm very blessed. Mr. Chester Turner down in Memphis, Tennessee, at 85 years old. And he'll tell you Walter Payton, pound for pound, is the best football player he ever seen. And then when you look at the positive Walter Payton, I always think about him going to Jackson State, but he's from Columbia, Mississippi, where my parents and relatives are from. And think about the stories that my parents tell me a little bit about Mississippi. My mother's from Sunflower, which is 23 miles from where Archie Manning was born. My father's family is from Canton, Mississippi, right outside Jackson. And then I listened to my uncle, Mr. Opie Turner, who I love dearly, how he tell me stories about Mississippi. But as I've been telling people as I do videos throughout the last 2 years during the pandemic, it's something in the water in Mississippi. I consider, based on the history of that state, some of the greatest people individually from all walks of life, from all over the world. The talent out of Mississippi is unbelievable. James Earl Jones, B.B. King, Morgan Freeman, Sam Cooke, Robert Johnson, Jerry Rice, McNair, Medgar Evans, Bo Diddley, Richard Wright, Albert King, A.J. Brown that just played in Super Bowl 57 yesterday, Phantom Hammer, Willie Brown, Oakland Raiders finest, Grambling University, Spencer Haywood, James Meredith, and Alexander O'Neal. And then you take Walter Payton, and maybe now you can understand why I'm proud of having parents from that great state. Even though a lot of people don't like Mississippi, it's something in the water that brings out special people, and Walter Payton is one of them. And I think it's really sad as I talk about this great individual. You look at the situation that's happened in Jackson State, and he did a lot of positive things. Then you look at Ed Reed. I'm very, very unfortunate things didn't work out with him at Bethune-Cookman. But when you're coming from historical black colleges, I hope everybody, and I know everybody has a lot of money that's played in the National Football League at a high level. I never had that type of money or life. But think about what you're doing when you're throwing bad marks at this school, because this gentleman right here, he paid the price. He paid to put Jackson State on the map. He turned down a scholarship to Kansas State in 72 and elected to go to Jackson State. Think about that. He turned down a scholarship to Kansas State that goes to a Jackson State. Let that reminisce in your mind for a minute. And I think about the first time I heard about this young man. My next door neighbor, Clifton Miller, went to see him play. And I remember him coming back on social media. 7 touchdowns, scored 46 points in that game, and went over 280 yards. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But the thing that I reminisce most about Walter Payton. Him being the fourth overall selection in the 1975 draft. And think about the college football season in 1974. You had USC that played that outstanding Rose Bowl game against Ohio State and winning that game 18-17. But think about the three top running backs that year that came out. Well, one of them was a junior that won the Heisman Trophy, and Archie Griffin. But think about the other two running backs that came into the league. Joe Washington out of Oklahoma had a decent career. And then Anthony Davis, who I thought was going to be a Walter Payton when he got to the National Football League. Them guys were average. Joe Washington had a decent career, but think about what Walter Payton did. And then think about Walter Payton. He went to the Chicago Bears at that time, one of the worstest franchises in all of pro football. And think about what he had to follow at the running back position. Willie Gallimore and Gale Sayers. Then coming out of Jackson State. Didn't nobody see that coming. Then think about the quarterbacks that he had to play with. No disrespect to Gary Huff. No disrespect to Bob Avellini. No disrespect to Mike Phillips. No disrespect to Vince Evans. And no disrespect to Jim McMahon. Think about Mr. Quarterback. Then think about this. He went to the playoffs, I think, only like 3 times in his career. But he finally won the Super Bowl. But this is where I got to put Walter Payton in another ring as I get my notes out. 1975, 679 yards. 1976, 1,390 yards. 1977, 1,852 yards MVP. 1978, 1,295 yards. 1979, 1,600 yards. 1980, 1,400 yards. 1981, 1,200 yards. 1982, 596 yards. 1983, 1,421 yards. 1984, 1,684 yards. But at 33 years old, Super Bowl year, 1,551 yards and 9 touchdowns. At 32 years old, 1,551 yards running, 9 touchdowns, and ended with a Super Bowl championship. Then you think about him breaking the single game record, going over 205 yards in the game against the New Orleans Saints. And breaking that single game record, having a fever of 101 degrees. Then him breaking the record against the Minnesota Vikings, Jim Brown's record. So much to think about Walter Payton and the pride he brought coming out of Jackson State University. And me being a guy, even though I didn't go to Jackson State, I went to the University of Arkansas, but yet and still, I don't really talk about the University of Arkansas, and I have a degree in political science, but one thing I'm going to take to my grave, it's all the great players that played at the SWAC. From Eldridge Dickey to Richard Dent, Walter Payton, Jerry Rice, the Harry Carson, Sonny Shell, the Deacon Jones. Come on, man. This man right here set the tone, and we need to do better. Then the skill set of Walter Payton that we should be talking about during Black History Month, then other things that's going on in them schools. His skill set of vision, A+. Walter Payton, A+. The balance, A+. The versatility, A+. The pound for pound, A+. The blocking, A+ as a running back. The hands, A+. The ball control, A+. The durability, A+. And that's why you produce a guy that played 10 years in the league, 9-time Pro Bowler, Pro Football Hall of Fame 1993, NFL all first team NFL 75th anniversary team in 1996. Fourth round pick in the 76 draft. And then everybody thought the Chicago Bears were crazy. Then a Super Bowl champion. And in his 13 years, 10 out of his 13 years, he rushed for at least 1,200 yards. And in high school, he was a hell of a musician and an outstanding basketball player. It's never going to be another great football player like this that's came out of the HBCU and what he's made his mark in the National Football League. And it's a shame that we don't even bring him up a lot of times. I hope today after this video and everything that's happened with the HBCUs or the negative press, let's go back a little bit in time and give a pauses to Walter Payton, who in my lifetime made me feel honored, proud, and a sense of respectability to say I'm the greatest players that played at the HBCU level. And Walter Payton was one of the greatest. I never forget at his funeral, he played with Dan Hampton. And Dan Hampton went to the University of Arkansas. And when I was a freshman, Dan Hampton won. And this year, Dan Hampton went in the first round. And I remember they had all the people speaking at Soldier Field, and Dan Hampton came up at Walter Payton's funeral. And I still get goosebumps and tears in my eyes a little bit. He said, through all the people, I've never been around a football player that played pound for pound. Not only his football prowess, but his personality. He made everybody better. And then I remember Mr. Hampton said this. He said, my daughter, who's at the time, I believe, 7 or 8 years old, and all his greatest grandchildren, when they get old enough and get grown, it's going to be an honor and a pleasure to tell them I played with the greatest football player ever in Walter Payton. And Dan Hampton was cracking, man. Go back and watch it on YouTube. I think sometimes we get caught up in life with a lot of other things, and we don't look at the good pines really from a sports standpoint. And a lot of athletes get wrapped up into themselves. I understand that. With LeBron James breaking the NBA record, no question about it, he deserves some flowers. With Patrick Mahomes winning Super Bowl. But this morning, this is where we got to give history and flowers to great players like Walter Payton. So if you like the video today, please come in and share it. I surely appreciate it here at 100 Yards Football. And when I think about Walter Payton, and I want to say this before I get into my final words, special thanks once again to Mr. Jeremiah Long, to the family of 100 Yards of Football, Mr. Ronnie Keebler, Mr. Bobby Butler, Mr. Logan Landis, to Mr. Donnell Scott, and Mr. Mark Bass. Walter Payton, you just think about all the great bands of the 70s, the Ohio Players, Roller Coaster. You think about Wild Cherry, Play That Funky Music, White Boy. You think about the great Rick James, Ghetto Life. You think about Ronnie and Deborah Laws. You think about Lakeside, It's All the Way Live. You think about Jeffrey Osmond and LTD, Stranger. You think about Ray Parker and Radio, Jack and Jill, Hot Stuff. I think about all those great artists. White, Teddy Pendergrass. It all goes back to sweetness. Walter Payton, man. What a phenomenal football player, brother. What a great individual. A guy that brought a lot of pride to the people out of the state of Mississippi, to a lot of people pride of Jackson State. I hope all you certain people that's out here saying you for HBCU space sports standpoint, let's give flowers to the great sweetness, Walter Payton, Jackson State University. If you like the video today, please come and share. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure to talk about this great individual, this great football player, and my father's favorite football player of all time, Mr. Chester Turner, Memphis, Tennessee. I love you, Father. Happy birthday. My dad was born February 26th of this month. And to all the other relatives that's played a big part in my life. To my beautiful sisters, Rhonda, Bridget, Stephanie. To my uncle, Opie Turner, man, I love you to death. It can't get no better. And once again, to the family of 100 Yards Football. Jeremiah Long, one more time, I'm sorry. Logan Landers, one more time, I'm sorry. Ma Denham, Ma Bass, I'm sorry. Bob, I'm sorry. Ronnie Killer, I'm sorry. Donnell Scott, I'm sorry. I got to give y'all flowers. Thank you and God bless here today on 100 Yards Football.